What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Howlak. Mark, just to start things off, buddy, how you doing?
Not too bad, buddy. Got some vacation in from work, so just kind of relaxing. It was my birthday last week, so just kind of hanging out. Hockey season's winding down a little bit. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Can't believe we haven't talked in a couple weeks. I feel like so much stuff has happened. Apologize if you guys hear my dog crying in the background here a little bit, but nothing really I can do about this little puppy. But how are you doing, dude? Like, how are you enjoying the playoffs? Because I feel like we were talking about how disappointing the first round was, but I feel like it's been getting better every round.
Oh, yeah, it's for sure been getting better every round. The only thing that would have made these two, or this round, these two conference finals just a bit more enjoyable is if we did get that game seven. Unfortunately, we didn't either series. That is the one thing that would have made it a little bit more enjoyable. But yeah, as we get go round and round and get closer to the draft and closer to free agency, I feel like this is when you really is the busiest in the NHL season, because regular season there's a lot of games, but a lot of the games aren't very important games. There's not as much on the line. Where here, every night, every game, there's a lot on the line. You're having coaches getting fired, coaches getting hired, as Sheldon Keefe got hired pretty much right away in New Jersey. You're hearing about guys that are pending RFAs or pending UFAs and sort of rumors swirling around there. We have the draft coming up immediately after the Stanley Cup Finals is going to end, right? So overall, there's a lot going on. And then that's just within the NHL. If you go and expand outside the NHL, we have PWHL that just finished up too, Memorial Cup that just happened. So there's a lot of big news and big stories going around for hockey on all levels, whether it's women's hockey, men's hockey professionally, or even just junior hockey and leading into the draft and all that, right? But I'm down to get right into this because we got an absolutely loaded episode here. The first
Yeah, it
news
is. It's definitely a lot to talk about, so let's get going.
First news on the bucket list, Will Smith. Big signing there. San Jose Sharks, they've signed Will Smith to an entry-level contract. Last season, he led the NCAA with 71 points and 46 assists as a freshman and was tied for sixth with 25 goals, and he did all this in only 41 games. So San Jose, they're getting an absolute stud. He was taken fourth overall just a year ago in last year's draft. My biggest question with this, though, Mark, is now that Will Smith is signing with San Jose and he's going to be playing in the NHL next year, does this almost guarantee that Macklin Celebrini, projected number one overall pick, is going to be up the NHL with San Jose next year? Because there's been a lot of discussion, does he sign with San Jose? Does he go back to BU and play with Cole Eiserman there? What do you think about this, though?
I think it most definitely means that. They're seriously going to push Celebrini to sign and play there, right? And I think it's just more of an incentive having a kid that played in the league that you were in last year as well, right? They were on rival teams with each other in BC and BU. I think it'll probably help Celebrini feel a little bit more comfortable with coming over right away. And it could be the same thing for Will Smith, right? He knows how nasty Celebrini is. I wonder, because he went to the Worlds, right, for the States. So I do wonder if he was over there and he was like, you know what, I'm good enough. I'm ready to do this. You know what I mean? Because I think regardless of his decision, he was ready to go. You can just tell with 71 points, right?
Yeah.
That was either a record or close to a record. I think the only time they were shut out the entire season was in the finals of that Frozen Four. I'm really happy for the kid. I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, I guess he's making the better choice for his life, you know what I mean, in accordance to just playing with Leonard and Perreault, the two guys that he's been line mates with for a couple years now. But honestly, Leonard's pretty close to NHL ready too. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of goes down that path later on. But I'm happy for Will Smith. Honestly, Sharks are going to be bad, but at least he's going to have Celebrini there with him.
Yeah, I think the Sharks are not going to be great next year. I agree with you on that. But if you're the Sharks, you got to look for that. You have these two cornerstone pieces coming into the organization in the same year. Yeah, they're probably still going to be a top 5 pick next season. Maybe if they overperform, they'll be top 10. But at least for me, they're going to be similar to where Chicago was at this year, where it's there's more excitement within the team because you're actually starting to see the future starting to come in and take over. And also think for the Sharks, you want to do a good job over the offseason here, bringing in some vets and getting getting those vets to teach these young guys how to play and how to be everyday NHLers. Like we saw with Chicago last year, they bring in Nick Foligno, they bring in Corey Perry. Yeah, the Corey Perry thing didn't plan out how Chicago was hoping it was going to plan out, but I think San Jose is going to try to do a similar thing this offseason and bring in some vets that have been around the league and know how to be professionals and really try to mentor and lead these younger guys on the team.
I think too, like it's not going to be. There probably will be some guys that are veterans that are kind of similar to Foligno and Perry in that situation that are willing to go to kind of a nice, like San Jose's not a huge hockey market, right? But it's a nice place to live. You could probably sign a 1 year deal and potentially get traded at the deadline. You know what I mean? Or you might even come in and get a little bit overpaid, kind of like what
Yeah.
Chicago's been doing, right? Because ever since Taves and Kane got off the cap, that 10.5 million each, like they've just been had so much cap space, right? That you're seeing these contracts they're signing. Everyone's making like 4 million bucks on their team when they're like NHL average players almost, right? So, yeah, like San Jose, I mean, they're definitely going to be a bottom five team, I think, at least for the next couple seasons. At least we can see how far like Celebrini and Smith can take them. You know what I mean? Because they might step in and be dynamite, right? But I wouldn't really have too high expectations for them. Um, Will Smith for sure. Like, do you think this is the right move for him though, or do you think like he should have almost stayed one extra year and like signed at the end of the year? You know what I mean?
I think this is the right move for him. And the thing I love about him is he didn't rush this at the end of the season and decide to sign like immediately after they lost there in the Frozen Four, I guess the Frozen Two, whatever you want to call it, NCAA
Yeah.
finals. Because like a lot of guys will sign right after their NCAA season's over. Where with him, he was patient, he waited it out, and I really do think like if San Jose didn't get the number one overall pick, and that he probably would have gone back another year because I think them getting Celebrini is really playing a lot into why he's signing with the Sharks because you're gonna have somebody to play with next year. You know the future has the books turned over, the pages flipped, and they're sort of going into the future now where they have some good pieces to rebuild with. Where it's like if you don't get Celebrini, and even if you're picking at two, man, like whoever picks at two this year, like they might not even be in the NHL fully next season, right? With just the way with this draft class is, like that you could see some AHL.
Especially if it's like Demidov or Levshinov that we've kind of talked about, or even like some other kids, like yeah, like I think it'll be hard for like a Russian to come over like right away and be almost guaranteed a spot. Because if he's not good enough, it's like I don't think he's going to the A. He'd probably prefer to just be in Russia, right? And then
Yeah,
even like if we're talking about Levshinov or even like Zeev Buyam or something, right? Like they're in the same situation as Will Smith, right? Where it's like they're going to college. It's not as easy as like being in the OHL, getting a 9 game trial and seeing if you're ready and going back. It's like you're not even signed to your contract when you're in in college, right? So it's a whole different like decision making process in that. So I do agree with you. Like we might see more than one guy play next year from the draft, but I'm not convinced that like even 2 through 4 is like playing in the NHL next year.
yeah. Like when you look at last year's draft, like we knew Fantilli was playing this season.
Yeah.
You knew Bedard was. It was a question mark with Will Smith, but like there was two
He was
guys there.
honestly probably almost ready to do it too. Like
Yeah,
he probably could have played on San Jose and been an NHL caliber player, but it's better for him to go to college and dominate and get better, right? But the thing is, it's like the difference between last year's draft and this year's draft. It's
is
like, bro,
drastic.
you like Celebrini might be going like third or fourth if it was last year, and
Yeah.
that you know what I mean. That's saying a lot. And then you also have Michkov, who's not even in the NHL yet, who's in Russia. So I think last year's draft, I mean, that's why we're seeing more guys playing right away. Even like Benson, dude, he probably should have went a lot higher than he ended
Leo
up going as
Carlson,
well.
which I forget completely forgot to mention.
Exactly, right? So, yeah, like I think that for sure Celebrini's playing. You might see another couple guys at least get like a chance to play. But I wouldn't expect too many guys to be at least like a full-time NHLer next year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there, and I completely agree that this is the right call for Will Smith. Like he tore up the NCAA. San Jose's on a brighter path here. Let's move on though to the next little bit of news here in the hockey world. It's the PWHL, the first ever PWHL season. It's now come to an end, and Minnesota have won the first ever Walter Cup. So little shout out to Minnesota. Let's get a little clapping going. The thing that was throwing me off with like with reading this is every time I wanted to say Minnesota, I was gonna go the Minnesota, and then I'm like, oh yeah, they don't have a team name, but we'll get to that later on here in the PWHL segment.
You're gonna have to get
So
used to it for Utah next year, dude.
yeah, I know. Well, at least it'll be like the Utah Hockey Club, like
Yeah.
still say throw the in front of there. But so the next little bit of action here for the PWHL comes on June 10th, where 42 players are going to be selected in the league's entry draft. And the interesting thing about this draft is you have a lot of college and younger players, but you have a couple older players who didn't go to the PWHL right away. Like Amanda Kessel declared for the PWHL draft, so it's going to be interesting to see like where does she go compared to like these like younger players coming out of college. So that all happens on
Yeah.
June 10th, though, and then they're also going to hold the awards ceremony for the league on June 11th. The literally the day after. It's all happening in Minnesota. And then the other big news we have here is at some point in August, the league is going to release all the names and logos for the teams. So it's going to be fun because we have some news to look forward to late in the summer, sort of when we're approaching the hockey season. Um, for the PWHL finals, oh pardon me, did you see the second last game, like the what happened there with the winning goal or the goal
No,
called
I
back?
didn't actually. I watched some of the game where it went like 0-0 to OT. But I didn't see what happened in that game.
So it went to OT, and Minnesota scored in OT, but it was goaltender interference. So they like celebrated, and then they reviewed it and they called it back. But a lot of people were like, "Oh man, like this is so bad." Like they celebrate, they think they just won, and now you got to go play again to finish off the game, right? But I'm looking at it like, dude, you know how bad it would have been if like a team won a championship on a clear goaltender interference goal. So it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
sort of
that's all.
awkward for
That's almost
Minnesota like
back to
that.
in '99 with the Sabres and Stars and like Hull's foot in the crease. I know it's different, but I mean, at the time it was a rule, right? And technically, like in my opinion, at least, like that shouldn't have been a goal, but it was almost like everything happened, right, dude? Like it's a goal. It's like they win the cup. It's like was the NHL almost like forced to like not even do anything about it? You know what I mean? Because everything's already happened. But like so Minnesota scored. I got called back. Did they win?
No, so they ended up losing that game and then they won the next
Wow.
game. Yeah.
At least they ended up
Yeah.
winning at all. But I mean, like that is kind of shitty. That sucks. But it's
Yeah,
like, dude, like, do you want the game called right though? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, it
that's what
is
I mean.
that's the trade off, right? It does suck that you kind of got to take everything back. But I mean, I don't know. I'd prefer the game called right. Like, if you were a Sabres fan, dude, like, wouldn't you just be like, what the hell? You know what I mean? From what happened in '99, like, you'd almost just prefer the right call to happen, even though that would be a goal today. But in that time period, it wasn't a goal, right? So, I mean, in my opinion, I would just prefer the game called right. I do hate the delays and stuff like that, but I mean, I think it's worth the trade off of like not having a guy go like 10 feet offside and then he scores and then it like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, it's
that's more
going
of a topic
viral
of
and stuff the next
conversation.
day.
Like that's more of a topic of conversation like months and months after the fact than, oh, well, we had to wait 15 minutes for a call here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just prefer the game called
Oh,
properly.
I completely agree with you. Like the other thing is like if you're the other team and like that's happening to you, you know how mad you'd be if you lost like the championship game or you lost a like series clinching game to like a clearly offside or clearly goaltender interference goal, man. Like I'd be so pissed off.
It
W
would really suck, dude. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I would just prefer it to be called properly. I think that it is definitely annoying in the moment to wait for it, but I think with the technology and everything now, I think that we should definitely be taking advantage of it.
Yeah, overall the PWHL season, it was a very good first season for the league, I think, and there's definitely a lot more to look forward here too. I'm gonna be probably watching the draft on the 10th. There's gonna be some fun names here probably that are gonna be called here, so I'm gonna keep my eyes on that. But we have another champion this season that needs to be announced. It's the Memorial Cup. The host Saginaw Spirit beat their rivals, the London Knights, in a 4-3 thriller Sunday night. It was an interesting one here because London defeated Saginaw in the conference finals on their way to win the OHL championship. And they also beat them, as you said earlier, Mark, in the round robin of the Memorial Cup. So Saginaw getting a little bit of revenge here on their rivals, London. Mark, you're the big juniors guy here, though. How did you like the Memorial Cup overall this year, and especially this finals?
I honestly, I watched a little bit of it. I quite enjoyed it. It's a lot better when you do have a really good team hosting. Um, People still say, "Oh yeah, Saginaw didn't deserve it," whatever. But man, like they were a top four team in the OHL. Like you know what I mean? This
Yeah.
wasn't a team that got bounced in the first round, had 2 months off to rest and prepare for this tournament. Saginaw had a really good shot of winning the OHL championship if they got by London and played Oshawa. Um, they loaded up this year. They obviously brought in some guys like at the deadline, even before the season started, like Owen Beck. He ends up being the Memorial Cup MVP, scores the first 2 goals of that game. Crazy thing about that game is, dude, like Saginaw goes up 3-0. London comes all the way back, ties it 3-3, and Saginaw wins it with, I think, 39 seconds left. So just an absolute heartbreaker for London. London had a really good season, obviously. They didn't have the greatest start to the season, but they picked it up and were probably most definitely the best team in the OHL throughout the season for the most part. And you know they would want to get that Memorial Cup to top that off, and it sucks that a team that they've beaten numerous times throughout the season gets them in that one game. It's dude, it's these tournaments, man. Anything can happen. Like we talk about Boston College being like probably the most like decorated like roster that I have seen in a while in college hockey. They get goalied in the finals, they lose. I'd probably say London's a better team than Saginaw too, right? But
Yeah.
Saginaw kind of gets to hold that over them now that they end up winning the Memorial Cup. Pretty crazy too, dude. Like two top 10 pick defensemen going at it in the finals, and Zane Perrick and Sam Dickinson, I would say. I think Sam Dickinson's kind of rising a lot of people's rankings after the way he's been his two-way game, especially showcased throughout the OHL playoffs and in the Memorial Cup. Did you get to watch any of this? Like I personally, I'm just being from Kitchener, dude, like can't stand London, so pretty happy that they didn't end up winning. Been kind of high on Saginaw all year long. We got Perrick, who's probably going top 10. Michael Misa next year, top what, 3 to 5? Like these guys have got a pretty talented roster, and even some guys that are drafted to the NHL already that might even be making their debuts like as early as next season, dude. So
Yeah.
I think that there was a lot of like future NHL talent, especially in the finals. And honestly, like I'm here for it, dude. I love when there's a lot of talent in the OHL.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch too much of it. I did sort of watch snippets here and there, but as you mentioned, the thing I love about the Memorial Cup is that you have these like guys that just got drafted or guys that are going to be drafted in the next coming draft battling it out in the championships or in the round robin or whatever. And like, dude, like guys rafts, pardon me, draft stocks are gonna raise a lot or could fall a lot based off these like 4 games, right? Like honestly, I think Zane Perrick, his draft stock has probably gone up even a little bit more after what he did
Yeah, he
in the
didn't really
Memorial
produce a
Cup.
lot the last couple games, but like he still looks solid out there. But I think it's more or less like the kid scored 33 goals as a defenseman, right? So it's like I guess if he's not scoring, it's like you don't think he's playing as well. Meanwhile, he's still looking quite solid out there.
Yeah,
But I
no,
think
I
like Dickinson, I mean, we haven't been that high on him. Like we know he's good and he's going high, but I do think that his stock has risen a bit. I think the way that he plays his whole 200-foot game, dude, that it's gonna entice a lot of NHL teams, man.
and the thing about Dickinson too, which is like I will say about him is I I think he will be a solid NHL defenseman. The only reason I sort of like Perrick a bit more is just because I think Perrick's ceiling is a bit higher than Dickinson. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those
He's got
things
more
like
of
I
an
think,
offensive upside, I think.
but on the other hand, his floor is a lot lower than Dickinson's, right? Like Perrick, he could be a guy who's an absolute stud in juniors scoring, and then when he gets to the NHL, where the skill is even that much better, and he's not as offensive, then it's like okay, like he's not that good. Where with Dickinson, like Dickinson's defensive game overall is a lot better, so I think his floor is a lot higher than Perrick's. But it's going to be interesting sort of see where those two guys go in the next coming draft. But yeah, overall the Memorial Cup's always fun. The other interesting thing about the Memorial Cup that I love is that the host team always gets a slight advantage because usually they've had a bit of rest time here where all the other three teams who won their leagues, like they're getting a couple weeks off, like a week maybe before you're going to the Memorial Cup and playing, where like Saginaw, they've had a full month off almost here before they had to play their first game, you know? So it gives you time to get rested, overcome any injuries that you may have from the long regular season and a long playoff run or whatever. It sort of makes it where the host team isn't, if they have a decent team and with the rest, like it makes it where it's not like they're just going to get pounded every game, which is what I love about the Memorial Cup as well. Let's move on
It,
though. And
I was just gonna say it was
go ahead.
nice to see that the Memorial Cup was good because I don't know if you saw like all the finals in the CHL with Moose Jaw, Drummondville, and London. They were all sweeps.
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, you see London? They won like 9-1, 9-3, 7-6, and like 6-1.
London
Like
was
it was
ugly,
pretty, it was
man.
pretty embarrassing. Like, so it was nice to see that we actually had some like good quality games. I know like Saginaw dummied Moose Jaw in the semis, like 7-1 or something. It wasn't really close, but it was nice to see they were able to get like a good final. You know what I mean? Like one team's not coming out and just absolutely killing the other. So I mean, you kind of hope junior hockey be a little bit more competitive next year, especially when you get to the finals. Like three sweeps is like kind of weird to me, dude. Like I don't think I'd like even ever predict that, but glad to see we had a good end to the Memorial Cup.
Oh, I completely agree with you there. Let's move on to the NHL now and the big boys and all the big news we have from them. Both the Eastern and Conference Finals have now wrapped up. Let's start off with the East though. The Florida Panthers, they beat the New York Rangers 4-2 to win the Eastern Conference and move on to the finals for the second season in a row. Unlike last season though, the Panthers did not touch the Prince of Wales trophy during the celebrations. I thought that was not too much of a surprise. Any team anytime a team touches it or doesn't touch it, if they go to the Stanley Cup immediately the season after, odds are they're probably going to do the opposite of what they did the season before when they lost in the finals, right? So I just found it funny though. There's the clip of Paul Maurice going to Barkov on the bench. He's like, "You do not fucking touch it. Don't fucking touch it."
Yeah, and he's like, no,
Barkov's like,
no.
"No, no, no, no fucking
Dude,
way I'm
did you
touching
see
it."
the picture too? Like they stood as far a fucking
Oh yeah,
way
dude.
as they could, dude. You could have fit like three more people between the trophy and the next guy. It was so funny.
Dude, I bet you if the NHL like allowed it, the Florida Panthers would have had police come out and set up like the crime scene tape around it. Can't cross it. Can't cross it. You're gonna shake like Bill Daly's hand. Nope. Can't come. Can't
You gotta
come.
come
Come
over
to
here,
me.
Bill.
But no, overall, I thought it was a really good series. We got three back-to-back OT games in this series, which is really enjoyable. For me, the biggest thing was like, holy cow, did Igor Shesterkin put on a performance in this series? Like, even though they lost, he was probably, in my eyes, like I'd make an argument he was a player of the series, man.
Dude, honestly, like Bob was good, but he still got outplayed by Shesterkin. Even though Bob is moving on to the finals,
Yeah,
like, dude, Igor played like he's always been really good in the playoffs, to be fair. Like even last year when they lost in seven to the Devils, like he was really good. And he was obviously really good a couple years ago too, when he had that Vesna season, and then they went all the way to the conference finals against the Lightning. Um, the Rangers are a good team, dude. Don't get me wrong, but I think Florida just had like another level to them this series over the Rangers. And I think that it was a lot closer than it seemed because of Igor. To be quite honest with you, there were some saves that he made that were just incredible. Fighting through traffic, dude, like just these backdoor plays that like he makes it look so easy, dude. And like Bob does the same thing sometimes. And look, he was really good as well. It's just that he didn't face the same rubber that Shesterkin did. And Bob did his job. Like he only really had one bad game, I thought, was that 5-4 game where Florida, did you see the shot attempts in that game, dude? It was like 110 to like 40 or
yeah,
something.
something crazy like that.
And then the Rangers won 5-4 off 23 shots, and Shesterkin had like 40 something saves. I thought that was really Bob's only bad game, and he kind of rebounded and was at least solid above average since then. Um, Man, Florida though, like, dude, like, do you find that like nothing phases these guys? Like, the way I see it with them is like, dude, they go into the first period down 1-0. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, we'll get it back. Like, even 0-0, like, you're getting outshot. Okay, like, whatever. Like, we got time here. We'll figure this out. Like, dude, like, they're down 2-1 in the series. It's like, they were completely fucking outplaying them to that point too, where it was like, dude, I'm worried a second about Florida. Um, I think that they're just hungry to get back to these finals. We'll obviously get into it with them playing Edmonton, but man, this is a scary freaking team, dude. Like, they are good from top to bottom, especially
Yeah.
when Bob's on his game. Look, dude, like Gustav Forsling has never got enough credit for what he does, dude. Like, he hasn't just like broken out these playoffs, man. Like, he has been a solid defenseman for a couple years now. I just think that he's been playing behind Uyghur and Ekblad and Montour that he's not getting noticed as much, right? And I think that's what made the trade with Calgary with Huberto and Kachuk easier to get rid of Uyghur, that it was like no one really talks about Forsling. Montour's about to break out. Ekblad, yeah, he was probably better a couple years ago, but he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, right? So they have a really solid like top three guys there. Forsling, dude, it's like, bro, like you can't even get around the guy half the time, man. Like the stat with him and Barkov playing like
That,
320 minutes together this season and they let in like 9 goals. Like,
yeah, that's
dude,
insane,
just
man.
dynamite defensively, dude.
For for me, I think he's going to get noticed even more next year because odds are Montour isn't going to be on the team next year
I don't know if
just with
he
the
is,
way they're
dude.
with their cap. So it's like his role is going to get elevated even more next year, and like I think people are really going to start to notice him. But yeah, Florida, as you mentioned, dude, they just have that edge where they don't get phased at all. Like I forget if it was game 4 or game 3, the one where Shesterkin was just saving everything and Florida couldn't get anything
I think it was
past them.
three. I think it was three of the 5-4 game.
But like, dude, that game, man, when the way Florida was carrying themselves coming out of the periods, dude, after that game, you were like, man, like you know nothing's phasing these guys, dude. Like, and I honestly I don't think Paul Maurice gets as much credit as he deserves, dude. Like, I think Paul Maurice has a lot to do with the mentality there.
I
And
think
and
too,
sort
he
of what
like, do
he
you hear him though, dude? Like not that he doesn't want the credit, but he says half the time he's like barely even coaching. Like
dude,
because
I think that's him being humble, man.
his guys just, but I get what he means by that in the sense like like they have a plan, they know exactly what to do, and they go out and do it, right? But that also is credit to Maurice, dude. Like he's the one who's
Yeah.
prepping them for this stuff, right? Dude, it all like I every time I think about Florida, all I think back is, do you remember that game last season against the Leafs when Florida was not doing that good and they took a timeout and Maurice just fucking screamed at the
Just
bench?
rip. Yeah, it
Dude,
was
it
after the
seemed
whole
like
Keith Tkachuk
literally ever
comments.
since that moment, dude, it like their bench just changed.
Yeah.
And they've honestly become an elite team since then. Because honestly, I'd be surprised. I'm sorry. I wonder to know what Maurice said, but it probably had something to do with like, dude, you guys are actually so good, and you guys like are not playing like this right now at all. You haven't all season, and like we got to figure this out. Like, you know what I mean? Because we might miss the playoffs here. So I think Maurice, dude, he's so much credit goes to him, man. I just hope he ends up like, as much as I want Edmonton to win, I hope he gets a Stanley Cup eventually because I think he definitely deserves one. Like, what are your thoughts overall in this series? Like, it was to the point, dude, where I thought even if the Rangers went up 3-1, like obviously they would have had a huge advantage, but I wouldn't have thought like Florida's done. You know what I mean? Just because of how well they played all series.
For me, in this series, I think Florida had a bit of a deeper team than New York, and I think the style of hockey they play, New York had a hard time playing against that at times. To be honest, like
Yeah.
at times there was times where Florida players were throwing the puck in, and a New York defenseman was going out to get it, and it's like, okay, just off the glass and out, or just like there's like 5 seconds left in the period, and it's like, all right, just eat the puck in the boards, and like the defenseman would go to flick it up in the air or do something like that, and a Florida player would bat it down and get a really good scoring chance. It's like, guys, like that, yeah, it's a simple hockey play. Like, just like don't do that.
It's the luxury too of having like so many guys on your team that can break the puck out on defense, right? Like we were talking about Florida's top three defensemen there. Like they're all good puck movers, right? And
Yeah,
the thing was too is like I love Adam Fox, dude, but I think he was
dude,
dealing with
he
something. Did you see the clip of him? So he went into the corner, he fell, and he's a right-handed shot, and his stick was laying down, and as a right-handed shot, like your left hand is on the knob, right?
Yeah.
And his stick was on the left side of him, and he reached over with his right arm to pick up his stick. And Bieksa was
That's
pointing out that he thinks that something's wrong with Fox's shoulder. And,
I
it, and
sort of
honestly, it made a lot of sense, dude, because he wasn't shooting as much. Like, he didn't have any goals in the playoffs. You'd As much as I thought he was solid and he wasn't a liability, it's like I don't think he was playing up to like where he's played, especially in the past in the season and stuff like that. I think there was a bunch of guys on the Rangers though that like kind of like disappeared once this conference finals hit, dude. Like you saw Zibanejad was tearing it up earlier in the playoffs. Like, dude, he was invisible.
Chris
He was
Kreider, I
more of
don't
a
think had the best
liability.
series.
And Aaron slowed down a lot. Honestly, dude, like Keandre Miller made a lot of mistakes in this series, dude.
Yeah, I
That
think
costed the
he was
Rangers
not.
goals.
When I was talking about some of the defensemen that were going back on the Florida forechecks and they were just tossing biscuits up the middle, one of the guys was Keandre Miller. He also had him like he couldn't stay out of the box either. It seemed like,
Yeah.
which
And the,
which
the
didn't
thing
help
is
him
too
out
is
too
I
much
think
either.
with Miller is like he's very talented, right? He's a big guy, he's a great skater, and I find that like he's not very good with the puck, like almost like in the neutral zone, like entering the attacking zone. And it's like he has the skill to like go through guys, but it's like he almost thinks that he's Adam Fox sometimes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's not always a good thing sometimes, right? You kind of just got to go in and make that safer play.
But yeah, back to Adam Fox. Like I don't want to say I hope the guy was injured because that sounds terrible, but like honestly, I didn't think he had a great playoffs, man. Like when you look at a guy like Adam Fox and sort of the defenseman that he is, eight eight assists in 16 playoff games, just like it isn't enough. The
No, dude,
performance
because
the
like
Rangers
he
sort of
he
need is like what Bouchard's doing for the Oilers. Like when you look at Adam Fox, he should be putting on a performance similar to what Bouchard's doing for the Oilers, similar to what Kale McCarr did
For sure, dude. And
for the
it's like
Avs when
that's
they
what
won the
people were
cup.
even saying a little bit about Quinn Hughes, right? Like not
Yeah,
getting a goal. And the thing is, it's like, dude, these two guys we're talking about here, like in my opinion, I'd probably say they're top five defensemen in the league, right? And it's
yeah.
not like they were playing bad. It's just that they have another level to their game that they're not showing. But like before we kind of move over to Florida a bit here, like listen, the Rangers made the conference finals. Like we're kind of hating on some of their players a bit, but dude, there's a couple guys that I thought played really well in these playoffs besides Shesterkin. One, Trocheck. I thought he was
Yep.
dynamite all playoffs long. Probably even took that 1C role away from Zibanejad as much as they weren't really showing it. Dude, the other one, fucking Lafreniere, dude.
That was the one I wanted to talk about. This guy, he had a
Dude,
breaking out party, man.
he fucking looks good, man. And it's not even just like he's putting points on the board, bro. Half these goals are like highlight reels, dude. Like he's making plays, like he's getting breakaways. Like honestly, when I think of Laugh, dude, as a Habs fan, I just think with Slavkovsky, just be fucking patient, dude.
Yeah.
Just this could be him in 2 years. You know what I mean? This could be the Habs going on a playoff run down the road, and he's a big part of it, right? It's like everyone was saying trade him last offseason. It's like, I don't know, man. Maybe they just saw that he's got another level to his game. Honestly, difference with Kako, dude. I don't know. My opinion, he kind of fucking stinks. I don't see the potential in him at all anymore. He's not producing in these playoffs, but Trocheck, Lafreniere, great. Honestly, as much as he's just a defensive guy, dude, Ryan Lindgren is a dog.
Yep.
He's always fucking noticeable out there. He would block a shot with his face half the time. Like he is what you need in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Dude, he's going down the tunnel 3 times a game because he's fucking injured from putting his body on the line. You know what I mean? So those are a couple guys for the Rangers that I really thought played well. Bro, what do you think they like? What do you think they're gonna do with Truba, bro? Like, dude, this
I
guy
don't
makes
know, man.
$8 million.
It's
dollars. He doesn't produce offensively anymore. Did you see the clip of the first goal
they do
last
Rangers
game?
fans hate him now, eh? Like they're there to
No,
do the
because he's bad. He's not good. It's
yeah.
not okay. Listen, the whole like him being dirty and like aiming for people's heads and like not hitting them or like almost hitting them is one thing, dude. But like he's actually like not a good defenseman, dude. Like, did you
He's
see
playing on
that
their
for that Bennett's goal? Did you see what he did?
it was a juicy giveaway, no?
No. Okay, so what
I'm trying to
happened?
remember it.
what happened? It was the one where Rodriguez dropped it to Bennett and he ripped like bar down. It went out in and out so fast. Do you remember that in the first
No.
period last game? Okay, I'm gonna send you the clip. So essentially, what happened was Trouba. They were playing a 3-on-2, and the guy on the boards had the puck. He passed it to the middle, and 3 seconds after, Trouba went to go take out the first guy out of the play, which gave them the 2-on-1 with Rodriguez and Bennett. Boom, boom, slap shot in. Dude, if you see this clip, you will be mind boggled, dude. Like, we could have played better defense than Trouba did on that play. It was actually like embarrassing. One thing that Witt pointed out on Chicklets that I noticed as well a couple games ago is, dude, as a defenseman, like, he skates way more forwards than he does backwards, which is
Oh
not a
yeah.
good thing, dude. Like, at
Because he's trying
all,
to line
man.
guys up half the time, man.
Exactly. So that's a dude. They only got a couple more years left on that. I know he's the captain, but that's a hefty contract, dude. And that is like what's
Yeah.
like almost not putting your team over the edge.
One, he's like playing on their third pairing, dude. It's not like they like don't have that many defensemen, dude. Like they're pretty deep on defensemen. Like you have Lindgren, as you mentioned. You have Miller. You have Fox. You have
Schneider was bumping
Schneider's
up to that top four.
who's been great. Like they don't really need Truba that much at this point. And if I was New York, honestly, I probably would try to move on from him.
So I
But
think I saw that he's got 2 or 3 years left on the deal. And if they buy him out, his cap hit is like 4 1 year, and then the next 3 years it's 2 million. So it's definitely worth it going down from 8 million.
I don't know if I'd buy him out. I'd more try to move him to someone. I think there'd be a team that would take him, dude. Like a younger team trying to get somebody to protect some of their players. Like I don't know, like San Jose
San
maybe. Like,
Jose.
yeah. As you a guy I do want to mention though that we sort of left out here a little bit is Barkley Goodrow, because I feel like Barkley Goodrow gets a little bit of hate at points just
Do
because
you
of
remember when
what
I ripped him like 2 months ago on this pod saying that he's going to be irrelevant in the playoffs?
pretty
He was
much
pretty
like.
good though.
But like I don't know, I feel like he gets some hate from even Rangers fans for like what he gets paid and where he sort of plays in the lineup and all that. And it's like I was listening to him the Steve Dangle podcast that um it was maybe a week ago or after the last game. I don't know, man. Everything's so mumbo jumbo in my head right now with all this stuff going on. But they were saying that Barkley Goodrow, yeah, you're paying him a bit high, but look at what he does in the playoffs, dude. Like part of championship teams in Tampa, comes to New York, has a lot of success here with New York in the playoffs. Like you're not getting the production from him in the regular season, but with what he does in the playoffs and the type of guy he is in the locker room, it completely makes up for it. Even Garrett Parsons, I remember at work like months and months ago, like maybe even at the start of the season, was saying Barkley Goodrow is an interesting one because I honestly don't want to see him get traded because just how important he is to the locker room. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And then you see what he does in the playoffs, and it's like, yeah, like he is a bit overpaid, but like, if he's their fourth best forward in the playoffs or like fifth best forward in the playoffs, who fucking cares if he gets overpaid during the regular season? You know, it's
No,
literally
I
like,
completely get that. I think it's just more or less like he scored 4 goals in the season. He had like 6 in the playoffs, and it's just like you're making close to $4 million and you're not producing.
yeah,
So I do kind of understand the hate a little bit, but um, with Rangers fans, dude, I feel like it's just like, dude, they have like these two guys that like, yeah, they're overpaid, but it's just like I think they just put so much of their hate towards that instead of
yeah.
like
Oh,
seeing
without a
how
doubt.
great their team is, dude, like being a President's Trophy winner, having like the best goalie in the league, and like even before that, dude, it's like they had Lundqvist before, right? So it's like, dude, Shesterkin might even have a fucking better career than him, like by the end. Like you don't even really know, right? So I don't know, man. Like yeah, Goudreau, it's like I think Truba is a lot more of like a problem for them. You know what I mean? Making like double the money, being the captain, and it's just like I don't really think that he's got a ton of like qualities in that besides being like a veteran guy. You obviously don't know how he is in the room and stuff, right? But I mean, we've seen how he's been playing, dude, and he's like nowhere near like an $8 million defenseman.
Yeah, they're gonna have to figure something out for Chubb in the future. I think we should move on to the Western Conference Finals. I'll talk about that before we break down the Stanley Cup preview. So the Edmonton Oilers, they beat the Dallas Stars 4-2 to win the Western Conference. And just like the Florida Panthers, they made sure to stay clear of the trophy, the Clarence S. Campbell Bowl, during the celebration. They weren't getting close to it either. Overall, this series, I thought it was pretty good. For me, dude, that McDavid goal last night, the opening goal. Oh my God,
Jeez.
dude. That was that was
That's
that was
him saying like you guys are saying I'm not doing enough in these playoffs. Like
yeah.
fuck you. You know
Dude,
what I mean?
he's the best player in hockey. And for me, when I saw that goal, I'm like, man, like as soon as I saw that goal and what McDavid did there, I'm like, I think they're winning the game tonight and winning the series. Like that's a man on a mission right there. You know, like nothing's getting in his way for moving on to the Stanley Cup Finals. That's when I saw that, I knew the fucking series was over. So, and the other thing is, I am so happy I cashed out that Stars future I
Bro,
had
I
on him.
didn't, dude.
I think I made like 45 bucks still, so I was happy about that. But for me, overall in the series, it just came down to Edmonton's big dogs performed, and it's like,
They really did. It was a pretty good series, dude, for the most part. I was surprised at how good Edmonton played defensively. I thought that maybe they did it. They played very well defensively in 6 and 7 against the Canucks, right? It's hard to like continuously do that, especially if you look at their decor as a whole. Like we've knocked their decor and it still hasn't really changed, right? But you can still have like below average or players at that position play higher than expected, right? For a stretch of games. I saw with the Montreal Canadiens back in 2021, dude. Like the top four was playing unreal, and there's probably two top four defensemen on the team, right? Um, so honestly, a big kudos to Knobloch, dude. Like we haven't talked a lot about him this year, just because he comes in, right? It was almost like we feel bad for Woodcroft. He goes through like the worst fucking 13 game stretch a coach probably ever does, gets fired, but it's really hard to say at this point that like it wasn't the right call, right? Woodcroft's never
yeah,
got them to the finals. Knobloch does this in his first season. Um, Leon, he was really good, obviously, all playoffs. And then he kind of, I don't want to say disappeared the first couple games, but he wasn't producing. But he's right back to where he was. You know what I mean? Just kind of seems like a couple nights off. We were just talking about how good Evan Bouchard has been. Dude, he's been good, like, even without McDavid. Like,
dude.
he is a great defenseman, dude. Absolute cannon.
I think Bouchard going into next season is going to be talked about as like he's on the edge of being a top three defenseman in the NHL based off the like playoffs this guy's having. Like, dude, this guy's probably going to be within the top by the end of the playoffs. He's going to be within the top three of points by defenseman in a single playoffs.
Yeah, I
Like,
saw those
he's
records say he could, like, even pass.
like, dude, this guy's been performing like unbelievable, and he's as we mentioned laugh earlier about the Rangers. Like, I think Bouchard is even taken another step here in the playoffs based off based off what he's been doing. For me though, I'm looking at Dallas's sort of stats right now here through the playoffs and their overall lineup. We always talk about Dallas being such a complete team and they're so deep. For me, like they are a super deep team and they are super complete, but it almost feels like at times they're sort of lacking that like real superstar player.
Okay.
I'm not saying like I'm
I
not
kind of
saying they
get
don't have
that.
any stars, but I don't think I think they have so many like 1B type of guys, but they don't have that 1A absolute like
I will
superstar
say,
100
do you
point
mean like
player
up
every
front?
year.
Because I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I would put Heiskanen in that 1A
I'm
category.
more mean up front. I'm more
Because
mean up
I'm
front.
gonna be honest with you, dude. If Dallas was going to the finals, Heiskanen right now would be my Conn Smythe pick. I think he was unbelievable, like in the entire run from him, from them. You know what I mean? For them, whatever the fuck I'm trying to say right now. With Heiskanen, dude, it's like he's always been like this elite shutdown defenseman who's putting up 40 to 50 points, and now it's like he finishes with 16 and 19 games, which probably gives him a little bit more attention. You know what I mean? But dude, you got to think like, bro, this guy played against Eichel, shut him down. Played against McKinnon and Rantanen, shut him down.
Yep.
Like, yeah, Edmonton's big guys got it done, but like, I wouldn't even say it was a lot really on him, dude.
Oh no, I think
Like,
Heiskanen had a great playoffs.
like there was a couple games where, yeah, I thought he probably could have been better in that Edmonton series, but dude, like he is a legit number one defenseman, great two-way. I really wonder now if he's going to be a lot more in like the Norris conversations next year, especially if he's putting up like 60, 70 points next year, like after this confidence, you know what I mean? Um, But yeah, Dallas, dude, it was like Robertson had that hat trick, right? But I felt like he almost struggled until that point a bit. It was kind of like, where is this guy? You know what I mean? Looking at other guys though, dude, like Wyatt Johnson was awesome. 10 goals in
Yeah,
19 games as a 20-year-old. Like you can't really ask for a lot more than that. He probably even outplayed Rupe Hintz these playoffs and was like
yeah.
more their number one center. You know what I mean? Rupe Hintz was a guy that kind of looked a little bit disappointing to me. A couple other guys too. Duchesne and Pavelski, man.
Pavelski 4 points over 19 games, man.
Yeah. He's
Not
a
good.
playoff performer, dude.
I dude, I the thing with him though is like, man, he's getting old, dude. Like we like as much as we
You think
love
that's what it is
Pavelski,
at this point? Like it's just
I think
catching
it's
up
him
to him?
slowing down, dude. Like I was watching the pregame show the other night, and Sportsnet was talking about having him down on the fourth line, playing him with Maverick Bork down there on the fourth line. Like, man, why the fuck would you have Joe Pavelski on the fourth line? And then I'm like, more looking at his stats, I'm like, oh yeah, like he's not been too great
No, he
so
hasn't been
far.
that good, man.
They have a
But
couple.
go ahead, sorry.
Dallas has a couple older guys. Like, I'm not saying these other guys didn't have good performances, but when I was looking at like oldest players to not win a Stanley Cup, or pardon me, not oldest, most games played in the NHL to not win a Stanley Cup, dude, I think like top 10, you have Joe Pavelski, Jamie Benn, and there was another
Suter.
Matt Duchene and Suter were all on the list for current active players. I'm like, man, dude, half the Dallas Stars team's on that list, bro. Like,
But that's why we've been hyping them up so hard
yeah,
all year, right? Is that they have this mix of good vets, young potential studs. They got that number one guy on defenseman, and you have your number one goalie in Ottinger as well, right? Um, With Dallas though, like you're talking about, like, dude, like Ben, honestly, he was good these playoffs. He
yeah,
elevated
no,
his game when he had to. Sagan, to be honest, too, dude, I didn't have a problem with his game either. I thought he looked pretty solid. I think it was just more surprising, like Hintz, Pavelski, Duchesne just didn't really show up and do a lot. And then you had the younger guys step up, even Stankoven, dude. Like, what did he have? 20 NHL games before these playoffs? Like, he's putting up 8 points in 19 games. Like, that's not bad at all. It's a lot better than a lot of the other guys that you're seeing here. One other guy I want to mention, obviously, he doesn't get on the score sheet a lot, but I think Tanev was a great addition for this team. And I
oh,
think
dude, they
that he
had
played well all playoffs long. You are so familiar with him from Calgary. He obviously blocked that shot. He was in a walking boot before game 5 and 6, but I was even watching him out there like after I saw that, and it's like you couldn't even really tell he was injured, dude. Like he's just that much of a warrior. Like we were just talking about Ryan Lindgren with the Rangers as well. Kind of that same type of player. Excuse me. If Dallas does have the ability to re-sign him, I think they should, because I think he's like, we talk about how deep they are, right? And it was like, it's like almost like if they lost like Duchesne for a game, would you be that worried? Probably not. But
no.
it's like, dude, if Chris Tanev was out of the lineup, even though Duchesne is probably a more valuable player to the team, you'd probably be like, oh fuck, like this is like not good. Like this is our number one shot blocking guy, defensive, like you know what I mean? Like this
Putting them
is a
up against
huge loss.
McDavid.
So if I was Dallas and he is interested in coming back, I would seriously consider that route, because I I, I would even bring him back over like Duchesne, dude, or Pavelski. Like at this point, I just think that he provides something that they don't have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'd definitely bring Tanev back if I was him. He's probably the like he's getting a bit older, so you got to find the right deal there. You don't want to sign him term too long where it's
Like
at
a
the
two,
point where
3 year
it's
deal or something.
he's regressing and it's like, oh, he's not not putting up the minutes that we were hoping to get from him. But I think if you can find the right deal there with him, I definitely bring him back if I was Dallas. The other thing I would do if I was Dallas is I would look at maybe bringing in like a top player, because like they do like they do got a lot of talent on their team. But for me, when I look at this team, man, like the way they sort of run their lines, they have three second lines, but or like three or like one B line and then two like second lines where you don't have that like one A line really. Looking at their roster
I
right
kind of get that, yeah.
looking at their roster right now, man, here's a little hot take. Would Mitch Marner fit well on this roster?
Like probably, but it's like, do you think he's that much better than Robertson?
No, but I think I'm thinking like in my head, I'm saying if Mitch Marner goes to Dallas somehow, Robo's still on
No,
the
I know,
team.
but but what I mean is like you're saying like they're missing a superstar. Like would you say like in my opinion, I would say Robertson is like on
The
the verge
closest
of
one,
being
yeah.
one. You know what I mean? Like he's had a 108-point season. Yeah, this season he wasn't statistically as good. He's a pretty good like 200-foot player too, right? And he's on a good contract, like 7.7, right? So I don't know, man. Like the thing is, it's like, could Wyatt Johnson be that guy? Like that's not a
Yeah.
guy I'd be willing to put in a trade. Like
I was more thinking
I
like
would almost consider
Stankoven.
him untouchable. Like seriously,
If it's a Marner trade, you're probably doing like Essa Lindell, maybe, and Stankoven,
probably
something
Maverick
like that.
Bork.
Maverick Bork, something like that. I was just thinking, dude, because if you put Marner onto this team, dude, and you had a first line of Jason Robertson, Mitch Marner, and Rope Hintz, man, like, oh, that is probably one of the best first lines in the NHL. You got the
I think
playmaker,
too, it's
you got the
like
sniper and Robo.
I think it's too is like last year with Dallas, it was like they had that first line of Pavelski, Hintz, Robertson. But I think Hintz and Pavelski have just like regressed a bit this year. Meanwhile, other guys on their team have probably improved. And Johnson, you got Stankoven up, like Ben and Sagan. So it's like their forward core is almost tighter together in accordance to like each guy's value. You know what I mean? Instead of like
Yeah.
having that first line and then having a pretty solid team throughout. Like you're saying, it's like you probably have a couple 1B or like 2A lines. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Like, yeah, Robertson almost going a point per game is obviously solid, but I don't think the consistency was really there this playoffs from him, especially if you want to be like talked about in that upper upper echelon class of being like a superstar, you know?
Yeah, I think we should move on to the Stanley Cup preview now. Get to the big news here. Of course, Edmonton, they're gonna play Florida for the rights to hoist the Stanley Cup. Game one set for Saturday, June 8th. And if the series goes to 7 games, we'll have a winner by June 24th. The thing I love about this, though, is all games in the series are set to take place at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So we're not getting any late starts. The 8 p.m. time sort of works well for everybody in North America, no matter where you are. 3 hours ahead, 3 hours. I guess you're not 3 hours behind, but you know what I mean. It's going to work
It's a
out for,
six o'clock start at Edmonton too. It's not too
yeah,
bad.
it's going to work out for everybody, even for the weeknight games. So I'm looking forward to all these games. What do you make going into this series though?
Man, my mind has been everywhere because I don't
Yeah,
know exactly what to think, man. Because I feel like I've like almost expected this from Florida that they could do this again and come back and potentially win. And with the Oilers, it was like I didn't think that they could really do this, even though that they are a great they got some great players, you know what I mean? I just think that there's holes in their game, but now that they got by Dallas like that, you know what I mean? It's almost like changed my opinion a bit. The one thing I wonder about though, dude, is like, do you think like Florida's physicality could almost like get to Edmonton?
that's the one thing. Like for me, the biggest difference between the Florida Panthers and Dallas Stars is Florida is a hell of a lot more physical than Dallas. So it's like McDavid and Draisaitl, I think they're going to be getting hit, bumped around a lot more. Even like Bouchard, Nuge, Hyman, those guys, they're going to have a more difficult time getting to their spots. Like Hyman loves being in front of that dude. Like Hyman lives in front of the
Yeah.
net. Dude, if those Florida defensemen, dude, they're gonna be putting Zach Hyman in a fucking back brace with the amount of cross checks that guy's gonna get in his lower back sitting in front of the net each game. You know, where it's like he wasn't really dealing with that as much against some of these other teams he's played in the playoffs so far. I think their physicality definitely is going to get to the Oilers a little bit more. For me though, man, it's like it's so hard to bet against McDavid and Draisaitl. It's like
It
every
is, man.
series, every series sort of they go into, it's like, okay, well, if you can neutralize or sort of shut down, slow down McDavid and Draisaitl, you probably could get by at winning the series, right? And every series, McDavid and Draisaitl, they just keep on going, keep on going. Like nobody's been able to really shut them down or or neutralize them so far. So it's like, based off what I've seen, man, like, do I think Florida has that much different within their defensemen that can really neutralize these two guys, and even like Hyman and Nugent Hopkins? Like, I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a really close series, to be honest. It's
I think it's going to be a lot closer than like some people are definitely anticipating. I will say though, it's like Florida probably does have like one of the better cores out of every defensive cores out of every team that
yeah,
Edmonton's played, though, right? Like we're talking about those three guys. Like, bro, I wouldn't be surprised if like Forsling is trying to like shadow McDavid, dude. Like, you know what I mean? But the thing is, it's like there's two of them, right? Like, and you can't really do that. Honestly, coaching is probably going to have a huge effect on this series with Knobloch and like what he's deciding to do with McDavid, Draisaitl at times, putting them together, splitting them up. Florida's got the home ice advantage, so I mean Maurice, at least to start the series, and later on will have the advantage in that category as well. It's hard, man, because it's like Stuart Skinner's been playing great lately, but there's little blips where he's not. You know what I mean? And Bob, I think, has probably been the more steady goalie throughout the entire playoffs, but I'd be lying if I said that Draisaitl and McDavid wouldn't be able to get to him. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, they can definitely get to him. I still don't even know who's going to win this series, to be honest. Like, I can't figure this out. The thing is, too, it's like we're not taking this into consideration. Like, how hungry is Florida, man? Like they go on this magical run last year. They get to the Cup Finals. They play Vegas. They're done in five, right? Like they were just here, dude. They know how this feels. This feeling of losing. Like you know what I mean? The Oilers haven't experienced that yet. There's only I think a couple guys on their team that have ever played in the Stanley Cup Finals. Like basically, this whole Panthers team has done it. And then
yeah.
it's like, bro, you're bringing a guy in at the deadline, Tarasenko. He's a Cup champ already. Like, so it's like, you know what I mean? Like, they have a lot of experience on this team. If I had to pick right now, dude, it is so fucking tough. I'm going Florida in six.
Okay.
I
See,
but like I could see Edmonton winning, dude.
the other
Like, I
thing
don't
I
know.
the other thing I think is going to play a major factor in this series is special teams. Like, you have probably the two best power plays in the NHL, and the facing off in the Stanley Cup final. And it's going to be interesting because, like, with how gritty Florida plays, it's like, do they maybe take some bad penalties at times
Yeah.
and give Edmonton a chance to get going on the power play? And like, if they do that, man, like, you're gonna have a hard time winning the series with how Edmonton's power play has been rolling
Well,
over the
dude, have you
last
seen how
couple
good their
series.
penalty kill is too, dude?
Yeah,
Like
and their
they've let in
penalty kill
three
too
goals
has
like the whole playoffs. And
been
I think
great.
they've killed off. So in 2021, when the Habs went to the finals, they either set or tied the NHL record for most penalty kills in a row. It was like 21 or 22, and then in game one, Stamkos scored. And I think the Oilers passed that this year. I think they're at like 26 or 27 straight right now. So it's their entire special teams, dude. Like
Yeah.
it's not just the power play, dude. It's Florida's got a really good power play, so it's like is Edmonton's penalty kill going to respond? Um the thing is though, it's like Edmonton kind of like they win a lot of games from special teams, right? So if it's even called even tighter with Florida being how aggressive they are too, it's like, is that a disadvantage for the Oilers as well? You know what I mean? The more 5-on-5 they're playing, like kind of the worse it is for them. You know what I mean? Like, what's your opinion on this series? I know you're saying it's hard to bet against McDavid and Draisaitl, so I'm assuming you're going Edmonton in this series. But
Dude, I got
like, do you think
Edmonton
it's
in
going
7.
7?
I think it's
Oh,
going 7, dude.
like so you think they take it in Florida in 7?
Yep. Yep. I
Wow.
dude, I can't bet against McDavid and Draisaitl, dude, based off the season and playoffs they've been having. Like, ever since the Woodcroft firing and Knobloch coming in, like, these two guys have been on a fucking mission, dude. It's just it's just so hard to it's just too hard to bet against them. Like nobody's been able to shut them down so far. They continue to do their thing. And the other thing too is, like, when you look at sort of other years where Edmonton hasn't even gone to this point in the playoffs, it was sort of just McDavid and Draisaitl those years, you know, like there wasn't too much secondary scoring where it's like Nuge in that Dallas series was phenomenal.
Dude,
I thought, like,
he's fucking good, man.
Like you got Zach Hyman, who's a fucking 50-goal scorer, man. You just put that guy in front of the net, and you know he's gonna get one off his stick or tilt his skates towards the net, and it's gonna go off him. And
Man,
you got
Nuge is probably
Bouchard.
one of the guys, like, sorry to interrupt, but Nuge is probably one of the guys I'm most happiest for, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, he comes in like almost right at the beginning of this whole Edmonton debacle. He's one of these first overall picks. He's been there for 13 fucking years. He just signed an 8-year deal a couple years ago when he could have decided to go elsewhere, right? He's been there through thick and thin, and it's like the fact that he's playing in a cup now, it's like, honestly, just really happy for the guy.
Oh no, I'm extremely happy for him too. And then Bouchard though, man, like he's been amazing. Like the guy on the power play, the shot he has, like it's such a threat. You got to watch out for him at the point every time they're on the power play. There's so many
Walks the
guys
line
on that.
so great too, man.
And then the other thing with him is like he can play that offensive game because you know you got Ekholm there to shut things down in the defensive zone, and he's always going to be in a good position. You got Cody Ceci, man. Like even I don't know why I'm fucking mentioning Cody Ceci like that, but like even Cody Ceci, like a guy who's like
He
been
hasn't been
ripped on.
terrible.
I think he's been all. I think he's been like not amazing, but I think he's been decent, dude.
Dude, you know what the funniest thing about all this is that like they're going to the cup, dude, and like Nurse has been playing bad, man. Like it was to the
Oh
point where I
yeah,
thought he could like almost be out of the fucking lineup, dude.
healthy
Like he
ball like
should have been like
nine
demoted
million
to the
dollar
bottom
player.
pairing, and it's like he hasn't scored. He's got like 3 points all playoffs. You kind of expect a little bit more from him, especially making like over 9 million bucks, right? So
Yep.
I don't know. Like Florida, they're a deep team, right? So like Edmonton's depth is gonna have to play a big part in this series as well. I found it so weird, dude, that they took out Desharnais though, the Oilers. And like it's not even, I guess, the wrong decision because of how they're playing, but I don't even think like he was the problem, dude. But then
No.
Broberg comes in, he fucking scores. So Desharnais's not coming, like he's not going back in, right? So I'm curious to see the decisions they make. Another thing we didn't talk about, Corey Perry passes the NHL record now playing in his a Stanley Cup with a fifth team.
Yeah, I know.
Now the NHL record is absolutely nuts, dude.
That's something, man.
Anaheim, what is it? Anaheim, Tampa, Montreal, Dallas, Edmonton.
This also
And
wouldn't have
what's that?
this also wouldn't have happened if he didn't get his contract terminated by the Hawks.
Unless he got dealt at the deadline,
I
yeah,
guess.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely not. I think the craziest thing about it though is it's like I guess lately he's been more of like a journeyman, like going team to team. But like, bro, he was with the Ducks for how long? Right? It's
Like
not like
at least
we're
10 years.
we're not talking about a guy who spent 2 year like who spent 2 or 3 years with a team max, right?
Yeah.
Like he's he could probably get his freaking number retired in Anaheim, right? Like Hart Trophy, Stanley Cup, 50 goal scorer. So it's just crazy to see. He's been like flopping around, but like the effect that he kind of has, even though he's not nearly as good of a player, he still is having a positive effect, dude. Or these teams wouldn't be going where they're going at this point.
Okay, I gotta before we wrap up the show here, we both gave our Stanley Cup winners. We're going completely opposite there, so that's pretty good. I think maybe we might have a bit of similarities here, though. If the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, who's your Conn Smythe pick?
Um, it obviously like the cup has a huge effect on it, how they end up playing. For the Oilers, honestly, I think just consistency all playoffs, and if it continues, I'd probably go Draisaitl.
Okay.
I'd probably say he's been even a little bit more consistent than McDavid has, and I guess just more or less if he continues the trajectory that he's on right now as well, I'd probably go Draisaitl. But honestly, dude, like you can't really go wrong with McDavid or even Bouchard, I think.
Yeah, for me, I have McDavid. My second would be Draisaitl. Third would be Bouchard at this moment. Of course, as you said, a lot can change through a 7 game series if it goes that right. So Cody Ceci for Conn Smythe is my pick after reconsidering. No, I got to go Connor McDavid, man. I think he's going to put on a performance here. Okay, and if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, who's your Conn Smythe pick?
I think I'd go Barkov. I think he's been kind of a different like animal these playoffs, even compared to last year, dude. He's kind of like more physical. He's like producing a little bit more. You could see that 200-foot game too, dude, right? You see how many like passes he's fucking intercepting in the defensive
Yeah,
zone. Like, I think all around he's been a great player. Other guys I'd probably consider Kachuk. And honestly, if they win the Stanley Cup and he has a huge part in shutting down Draisaitl and McDavid, like is Forsling seriously a bad option? Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Gets a couple goals, couple points in the series, maybe. He's got 11 in these playoffs. Like, I don't know, but I think right now I'd probably go Barkov. Because the other thing too, it's like if they win, he's going to be probably shutting down McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or at least minimizing them.
For me, I'm going Matthew Kachuk for the Panthers. Conn Smythe
Just
if they
elevates his
win.
game in the
I think
playoffs.
yeah, like I think Matthew Kachuk in if he has a good series, he could really break out here. Not break out, but because he's already a phenomenal player. But even just put up a lot of points. Basically, if Barkov's playing a more defensive role and shutting down the big guys on Edmonton, I think Matthew Kachuk might have a little bit easier matchups every night, depending on who he's playing against. And the other thing too is the power play, man. Like, dude, this guy could have 5 points in a night on the power play if the power play gets rolling. Like,
Yeah.
will he do that? Probably not.
I think he's got a little bit
Could
of
he
edge
though?
to him too from like
Yeah.
your fucking team like losing to them a couple years ago in the second round. I know he's on a different franchise, but man, that probably sticks with him. You know what I mean? Like you guys had a really good season that year, probably poised for a run. You know what I mean? And the Oilers take you guys down in five. So I think that even though that's more of a personal thing for him being on a different team, I think that he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. You know what I mean?
The only thing that Matthew Kachuk would hate more in a Stanley Cup final would be playing against your daddy. It's the only thing.
Yeah, probably.
He's playing against the Oilers, and he's probably going to run McDavid from behind game one opening face off.
Before we wrap up here, I have something like off topic from the Cup Finals. Um, like obviously you're saying like Keefe got hired earlier. There's been some firings and stuff. So Seattle hired Bilesma, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
So he obviously coached the Pens in '09 or whatever to the Cup. He's won a Jack Adams, got another chance with Buffalo, has been like not coaching, not since, but not in the NHL. And then he's been with Coachella in the AHL, Seattle's farm team, the past couple of years, done a really good job with them. Do you find it weird? I was just wondering because I wanted to ask you this question. Do you find it weird that Seattle went out and hired him when he's mid playoff run with Coachella? Do you
No, I
think
don't.
that's odd at all or no?
The
Because
only
like
reason
what's the point of like if you know he's your guy, like why are you making that like almost a distraction for him? Do you get what I'm saying? Even though it's not the NHL, I know it's a different league, but like you obviously want your farm team to do well, succeed. They went game 7 OT in the Calder Cup last year. Like they announced this right before the conference finals, right? So he's still obviously fucking coaching. So did you think that was weird at all? Because that was the first thing I was like, he went to Seattle for the conference and he's like almost has to rush back to Coachella because he's got fucking practice. Like, you know what I mean?
for me, I don't find it weird just because it's like an internal hiring. It's like it'd be weird if he was a head coach of the Marlies and they announced it. Like, then again, I
Okay.
guess you wouldn't give him permission to speak at that point. The other reason I sort of don't think it's overly weird is because at that point you're interviewing multiple candidates. Like, you gotta be fair to the candidates that aren't getting the job as well, and you can't like HL playoffs is gonna go longer than NHL playoffs, right? Like by probably a week or two. So it's like
Yeah, yeah.
you don't want to be having all these other candidates like holding out for this Seattle job and missing out on other opportunities because you can't announce a hiring of a guy until like it's too late, right? Like
That
I
is fair. I didn't really think of that like almost like because I mean if they go all the way to the finals, like it's gonna be the end of the June, right?
yeah.
So it's and I feel like at that point, if they were even telling other candidates, no, you didn't get it, and Bilesma was like undercover hired, I feel like people would probably start to figure it out.
Oh yeah, well for sure, for sure. I
But that's
think
like honestly, I don't want to talk a lot about that, but honestly, I've always really liked him, and like I felt like his NHL path is like so much different because like he wins a cup, dude, and then he wins the coach of the year, and then it's like it seemed like Eichel didn't like him in Buffalo, and it was almost the reason he was out. And it was like he
yeah.
hasn't really had a chance since, and he's got a pretty good resume, right? And like, there's nothing been wrong with him. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I guess I'm just surprised that it's been 7 years since that guy's coached the NHL. Always thought he deserved another opportunity. I'm happy that he's getting it. He's doing a good job with Coachella, and I think the one thing that they like is like Shane Wright's playing well. for them. So it's like he can continue to kind of develop young players. But no, I was just curious about your input on that because that's not something that we see a lot. You know what I mean? Like mid-playoff run, a guy's hired.
Yeah, overall, it's definitely nice though to see him back in the NHL and see a guy get a second shot after being out of the NHL for a couple of seasons. Overall, though, I think we had a great podcast so far today. It's gonna be nice because we're gonna be able to have a bit of time off here before we got to record next, just with how much time we have in between now and the Stanley Cup Finals. But for everybody tuning in, thanks, and we'll be back at some point within the next 2 weeks here to sort of recap what's been going on with the finals.